Let's talk about the universal laws. There are certain laws called the universal laws that govern the outcomes that you have been experiencing in your lives. You may not even be aware of. You may be aware of some or all of them, or you may not be aware of them at all. Everything just is. Everything is just energy, or you only attach meaning to something when you compare it to the next. But how about if you switch that idea to say that, hey, but that's fine because I'm still going to get the deal after 2 weeks. He didn't say no, he didn't completely decline it. All he said was that he's going to close it in the next 2 weeks. Now, how does that switch the energy behind that thought, right? It completely uplifts you. You feel like, yes, you're still on the right track. You are going to achieve your target. The thought that you put behind it is going to determine the outcomes that you get. If you start using the universal laws in your favor, your life is going to start panning out so beautifully. You will not begin to imagine what these laws can do for you. Let's talk about the universal laws. We are all very familiar with the laws that we need to follow that have been set in our countries, in our companies, and in our lives. You know, you could call your routine the laws by which you live on a day-to-day basis. But there are certain laws called the universal laws that govern the outcomes that you have been experiencing in your lives that you may not even be aware of. You may be aware of some or all of them, or you may not be aware of them at all. Now, when you use these universal laws to your favor, so you have to first understand them, and then you can start using them in your favor. And you'll see how life actually starts changing your experiences as per what it is that you truly desire, rather than what's actually not happening. So what is it that you'd like to happen as opposed to what's not happening in your life, right? So when you start implementing the knowledge of these universal laws, then your life actually starts transforming. And I want you to know that it's not just about understanding this at an intellectual level. You've got to implement this, right? You know, at every level in your life, when you are faced with a challenge or when you want to do something that you've never done before, when you start implementing these universal laws, then you'll see how your life actually starts going in the direction that you desire. So I'll start with the law of relativity, and this is my favorite one. You know, here's the thing, everything just is. Everything is just energy. It's just that we tend to attach a meaning to it. And the law of relativity states that there is no big or no small in our lives until we compare it to something. So I want you to imagine 3 boxes in your mind, right? So label them as A, B, and C. So A being the biggest, B being the mid-size, and the C being the smallest. Now, why am I saying big, mid-size, and small? Because I'm comparing them to each other. Now, in life, when you place a meaning to something, it's because you're comparing it to something, right? You know, I didn't do well in my exams. I'm not earning as much as, XYZ person. How come they keep getting promotions and I don't? So this is where you're actually not using the law of relativity, because you keep comparing yourself, you keep comparing your outcomes, or you keep comparing A to B, B to C. So you only come up with a meaning, or you only attach meaning to something when you compare it to the next, right? So the box B that I was talking about is actually bigger than C, but it's smaller to A in comparison to A. So the question that you need to ask yourself is that, are you using the law of relativity in your life to work for you or to work against you, right? Remember, everything just is. Everything is just energy. It's the meaning that you give to something is what creates that meaning. And that takes me to the next law called the law of perpetual transmutation. Now, as I said, everything is just energy. Now, it's the thought that you give behind that idea is the one that creates the meaning, right? So, for instance, if you're a salesperson and if you approached a prospect who promised to you that they're definitely going to hand you over the deal today, and that day comes and you're very excited, you wake up with so much enthusiasm, you're like, yes, today I'm going to meet my sales target. When you go meet them, they say that, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be able to close the deal today because something's come up and I'm going to be able to do it maybe in the next 2 weeks. And the first thought that you'll probably have in your mind is, oh shoot, I'm not going to be able to meet my targets, right? So what idea did you create behind it? What is the thought that came to you behind that particular situation? Now, remember, the situation just is. It's because you are saying to yourself that you're not going to be able to meet your targets on that particular day. You go home very depressed, very disappointed, right? You feel like, oh my God, today was supposed to be the day. But how about if you switch that idea to say that, hey, but that's fine because I'm still going to get the deal after 2 weeks. He didn't say no, he didn't completely decline it. All he said was that he's going to close it in the next 2 weeks. Now, how does that switch the energy behind that thought, right? It completely uplifts you. You feel like, yes, you're still on the right track. You are going to achieve your target. So this is what the law of perpetual transmutation is about. You're always engaging in some kind of energy, right? Everything is just energy. Like if I go out and I meet with a lot of traffic, if I decide to get frustrated, then I'm not using that energy in my favor. I'm allowing it to impact me in a not so good way, right? So energy is always coming through us, to us, from situations, circumstances, and people. And this is very common with conversations, right? Whenever we have conversations with people, like in my culture, it's very common where people highly discourage you. They talk about the economy, that taxes, all the difficulties, and now everyone's talking about the war that's happening in the Middle East. But the question is, how are you going to perceive it? Because energy just is. The thought that you put behind it is going to determine the outcomes that you get. Because remember, the example that I gave you about the salesperson, right? If he went home disappointed, then do you think he's going to go with the same energy, with an enthusiastic energy to the next prospect? Absolutely not. And that might actually sabotage. It might actually sabotage his chances of making further sales. All right. So how are you using the energy that's coming in from your environment? Are you using it against you or in your favor? And this comes to thought, right? So this takes me to something called the law of attraction. Now, everybody, you might have heard of the law of attraction. I'm not sure. But the law of attraction basically says that whatever you think about is what happens in your life. Now, the example that I love giving people is that I always say that I've earned $1 million today. How come it hasn't happened, right? That's not how the law of attraction works. So as much as the law of attraction says that, yes, whatever you think about is what actually happens in your life. So thoughts create things. That's what the law of attraction is believed to be about. But the underlying law is something called the law of vibration. So I want you to understand that until you don't vibrate on that frequency. So here you are saying that I've earned $1 million, but you're not vibrating on the frequency of $1 million. You're vibrating on the frequency of maybe $500,000, $10,000, whatever it is. So the law of vibration is actually the primary law, and the law of attraction is a secondary law. So until you don't correct your vibration and get into the frequency of what it is that you desire, then the law of attraction can never work. So the law of vibration works at an energetic blueprint level, and the law of attraction works at a conscious level. All right. So you have a conscious mind, you have a subconscious mind, and then you have your energetic blueprint level. So your law of attraction idea works from your conscious level, which only has a 5% impact on everything that you do. But the law of vibration works at a deeper level that has a 95% impact. So until you don't vibrate on the frequency of what it is that you desire, the law of attraction cannot work for you. All right. Then another one that I really like is called the law of supply. And this is one of my other favorites one, because this is something that I learned from Bob Proctor. Bob told me that the supply of whatever it is that you desire is infinite in this universe. It's for you to ask whatever it is that you desire. The problem is that we feel like resources are finite, they're limited and they're scarce. So a lot of us come from that place of scarcity. And when we talk about, things being infinite, the supply being infinite to you, so people start wondering, what do you really mean? So the thing here is that you are the creator. Remember, because through the power of your imagination, you getting onto the frequency of what it is that you want, you can draw to yourself whatever it is that you desire. Now remember, I told you that I didn't have the money to invest in the consulting practice worth $30,000. So I didn't physically have the supply of the $30,000, but my end desire came to me through different means. So you don't always need the money. All you need to do is make a decision, because the supply is available to you. All right. And this even pertains to money, because a lot of us are wondering that how do I make more money? It's because you are stuck in the how. You've not made a decision that this is the amount of money that I want to make. All right. So you don't need the money, you actually need the decision, right? And then the other one that I really like is called the law of gender. Now, the law of gender says that there's always a gestation period between the time you talk about your desire, meaning you infuse your desire into your subconscious mind or from your energetic blueprint, and the time that you actually realize it. So the gap that you get between the time you say that yes, this is what I desire, and the time you get it is called the gestation period. So it's like when you plant a seed in the ground, right? It's not going to sprout into a plant immediately. It takes a couple of years, it takes a couple of months until it becomes a fully grown plant. And that's exactly how your goals and desires work. Now, that does not mean that you stop taking action towards them. But here's the idea, that you've got to continue doing the inner work as you take action, so that you start matching the frequency of what it is that you desire. Now, the biggest problem with us is that we elongate the gestation period by actually worrying, doubting, and having fear. When you doubt, worry, and have fear, then you're elongating the period between which you've decided that you want this goal and the time that it will come into your reality. So we get confused in between, and the gestation period gets elongated. So what we need to do is we need to rest and relax internally. Now, this is another concept that a lot of people don't understand. When people talk about resting and relaxing, it means you've got to do it internally. But as you are taking action, you're doing it from a place of restedness. So internally, you're whole, full, and complete. And this is where I want to also talk about something called preference, that, I prefer to have this. And then there's something called a requirement, right? So you say that I require this. So you become somebody who's needy of that desire. And that desire actually goes away from you because you start repelling it. But when you say that I prefer this, but if I don't have it, I'm still whole, full, and complete, then that creates a larger magnetic field around you. And whatever it is that you desire comes faster to you. All right. And then I want to talk about something called the law of polarity. This is another interesting one, because we always experience opposites in our life, right? It's like if you don't experience sadness, how will you experience happiness? So I want you to understand that the law of polarity states that everything has an equal opposite. So if you're experiencing something that's not very desirable in your life today, I want you to know that an equally good thing is on the way, right? And that's related to something called the law of rhythm. Everything happens in waves. There are always ups and downs. So, even if you are going upwards, there's even a down in the up that you're experiencing, right? That's how it works. So I want you to know that if you start using the universal laws in your favor, your life is going to start panning out so beautifully. You will not begin to imagine what these laws can do for you. Now, if you want to learn more, if you want to be a part of my community, and if this video resonated with you, do get in touch with us. Do share it with the people who you think this can help. And I'd love to help you further with how to implement the universal laws in your life.